الحمد لله وحده وصلواته وسلامه على رسوله المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So we're now in the 22nd Juz of the Qur'an, and as you can tell, we're coming up very soon to the end of Ramadan, inshaAllah. And it's always interesting because as we read through the al-Aḥzāb of the Qur'an, like the different parts, we move chronologically, but the reading doesn't. The Qur'an is not compiled chronologically. But I thought I would pick out, because I feel like the readings we've been doing every night have been somewhat thematic and connected, and similar to what we talked about last night. I'm going to begin at the 35th verse of Sūrah al-Aḥzāb. Sūrah al-Aḥzāb, the 33rd chapter of the Qur'an, in the 22nd Juz, or 22nd component of the Qur'an. And while not very long, Surah al-Aḥzāb touches on a lot of different points. And many of you are maybe very familiar with this verse or have heard part of it quoted. And some of the questions that you've been asking and what we've been talking about what to do at this day or this time, or building, how do we build and construct our faith. And what's beautiful about this verse is that Allah actually very succinctly breaks down the attributes of a believer again for us. Very similar as we discussed like in Surah al-Mu'minun, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, right? The believers are successful. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ, that they have focus in their prayer, right? When it comes to their zakah, they are fa'ilun, right? Where Allah gave some of the qualities, and He does so again. And this is very beneficial because, when we want to know where our relationship with Allah is at, sometimes we wonder, how does Allah think of me, or do you feel close to Allah, and such and such. This is a great verse to look at, to give you kind of a GPS location and to give you some goals to aspire for and some of the attributes of a believer. So Allah says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقائتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. So in this verse, Allah begins by saying that without a doubt, right, إن المسلمين والمسلمات. Now, the way that you can read and understand this verse is that at the end of it is the predicate, right? If you go back to our grade school here, our subject and predicate, and في العربية المبتدأ والخبر, right? So Allah says, إن المسلمين والمسلمات what لهم أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. That for the Muslim men and Muslim women, right? So as you may have heard, or you could tell, right, in the verse, Allah is not just saying al-Muslimin, wal-Mu'minin, wal-Qanitin, wal-Sadiqin, wal-Sabirin. He's not just saying like the believers and the Muslims and such, right? He's breaking it down into two categories to demonstrate when it comes to the vast majority of the religion, men and women are equal. In fact, men and women are equal before Allah, of course, in terms of taqwa and whatnot, but we may have different mas'ulat. We may have different roles and responsibilities, right? But we have the same standing before Allah. And Allah makes this emphatic and clear that al-Muslimina wal-Muslimat أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. For the Muslim man and the Muslim woman, Allah has prepared for them, right? Forgiveness already prepared. You might say, okay, He's prepared for you your reward for being Muslim, believing in Him and praying to Him and fasting and so on and so on. But Allah is saying, أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً. Allah has already prepared forgiveness for the Muslim man and the Muslim woman. For Muslim men and for Muslim women, because it's actually really in the plural, right? This tells us that being Muslim, we're still going to make mistakes. We're still going to sin. We're not perfect people. We are going to have our faults, but because we believe in Him, and we don't associate partners with Him, and we believe in what was revealed to His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what? أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً. Allah has already prepared in advance, because here the verb is fil madi, right? It's in the voice of past tense. So the believing men, the Muslim men and women, Allah has already prepared for them forgiveness because He knows that we will make mistakes. And He also, and then of course, وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, and Allah has prepared for us, right, an enormous reward. وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. Now why split up Muslim and mu'min? Right? What is some of the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min? Muslim is من قال لا إله إلا الله ودخل الإسلام. من قال لا إله إلا الله ومحمد رسول الله دخل الإسلام. Right? A Muslim is simply one that makes the shahada, that makes the testimony of faith. There is no one to worship but Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his prophet. And therefore, as Sa'di says, when it relates to these aspects, right, he says, فَلَمَّا كَانَ مَحْقُهُنَّ وَالرِّجَالُ وَاحِدًا جَعَلَ حُكْمُ مُشْتَرَكًا قَالُوا إِنَّ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ وَهَذَا فِي الشَّرَاعِ الظَّاهِرَةِ. These refer to the outward things. So a person says their shahada, they are now part of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are now part of the Muslim community, and they may have some of the outward appearances of being Muslim, right? He calls this fi shara'i al-dhahira. But he says in the beginning, وَلَمَّا كَانَ مَحْكُهُنَّ وَالرِّجَالُ وَاحِدًا. Right? The bulk of the commandments that Allah gives in the Qur'an, of what is demanded of us by Allah, they apply to men and women, right? There's a few things that are different, right? Like for instance, we all have the obligation to pray. The difference is, what are those things that invalidate prayer for men and women, right? So for a man, if you're sick, obviously to the point you're bedridden, you can't pray. If you're bleeding or something, right? Whereas where a woman, if she's on her monthly cycle, that's a conditional, right? So the conditionals that remove the obligation temporarily of prayer differ between men and women, but the obligation to pray is the same. We all have to pray 5 times a day, so on and so on and so on. So he said this is part of this is why Allah is laying out, right? Innal muslimina wal muslimat. So Muslim men and women, we all have the obligation towards essentially the khams arkan fil Islam, the 5 pillars. And then the wal mu'minina wal mu'minat. What does this mean to be a mu'min? He says hadha fil umur al batina. These refer to the affairs of a Muslim that are more on the internal وَقَوَاعِدِ الْقَلْبِ وَأَعْمَالِهِ, right? من قَاعِدِ الْقَلْبِ وَأَعْمَالِهِ. That they refer to those rulings of the heart and their condition of their heart and their belief and their sincerity, right? And their أعمال, وَمِنْ أَعْمَالِهِ, as he says, right? And in terms of their deeds. Because a person can be a Muslim, and we may know people like this. They're Muslim, but they don't pray. They may even drink, unfortunately. They may do many types of things they don't. But we don't go quite to the extent of the Khawarij and say, okay, kharaj al-Islam, that they left Islam, right? Even though there are some very strong ahadith, some very strong narrations from the Prophet ﷺ. For instance, for the one man taraka salah, taraka Islam, right? For the one that has abandoned the salah, doesn't mean that he's kasal. Not just that he's lazy, he or she is lazy with the prayer, but if they abandon it to the point where they no longer see it as an obligation, there is an opinion in the fiqh that this is a person that has left Islam. But in the more general sense, right, he's saying that Allah designating the difference between Muslimina wal Muslimati wal Mu'minina wal Mu'minat, between the Muslim and then the believer Muslim, is that then the Muslim that is one who believes in all of this, right, that they have also a certain disposition in their heart that they will try to be obedient to Allah. وَالْقَانِطِينَ وَالْقَانِتَاتِ, right, and that these are also the people of qunut, right? These are the people who are, they translate sometimes the word, qanitin, qunut, right? A person who is obedient. The word qunut, so it's qanit, right? The plural being qanitun or qanitat, right? A person who is qanit, related to the word qunut, right? What is when we make the dua of qunut in the night, or remember, last year if you were there for Ramadan, you would hear the Imam make this long dua after the shafi'i wal witr, like the last final raka'ah, and he makes the long dua. We call this qunut. Some people think qunut is like something very beautiful because the dua rhymes and such. But the meaning of the root of qanata means to be desperate for, right? To be desperate, right? It means to have such desire and to have such longing. Matter of fact, I think it was Ahmed last night that we were talking at the very end of the Q&A, about what to do in these last 10 days, right? Be a person who is qanat. Be a person who has desperation in need for Allah. So we begin with declaration of faith, in that recognizing La ilaha illallah and Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluhu. Then we move to mu'minina wal mu'minat. They have faith. They believe in what? آمن بالله ورسوله وكتبه والملائكته والغيب. They believe in Allah and the angels and the messengers and the books and the last day and the day of judgment and the fire and the garden. Right? They are a mu'min. They believe in those things. But then a third level down is the person who what? This is a person who this is a person that not only testifies to Allah's existence and Muhammad is his messenger, and not only believes in the last day and Allah and right, but they're desperate because they realize that without Allah's mercy, without Allah's forgiveness, they will not attain that goal of theirs, which is to go, because they realize that at the end of life, there's only two destinations. Inna sa'yakum lashatta. Like, we have all these things that we strive for in life, but at the end of life, there's only two destinations. You will either go to the garden or you will either go to the fire. And the person who is qanit has a desperate need to go to the garden. They have a desperate need for Allah's maghfirah. Right? So the word, to be it's to be obedient, to be desperate, to have need, right? These are some of the things that are related to it, right? That you seek, you want to be obedient to Allah. وَالصَّادِقِينَ وَالصَّادِقَاتِ. Then below that is a person who is truthful. Because you can be desperate and need Allah and try to be obedient to Him, but you can have some character flaws. But the person that is sadiq will then be obedient, will then believe in Allah and His Messenger in the last day, and will of course testify to Allah and Muhammad as His Messenger. And then as-sabirina was-sabirat. In fact, one way to see this, the person who has sabr, as-sabir, right? As-sabirina was-sabirat. The men and women who have sabr, to have that kind of endurance, that patience, that perseverance, then you could be truthful, because sometimes being truthful is not easy, right? Being truthful when people are cheating or lying or doing other things, you will not follow suit, and you will be what? You will be truthful. Then you will be obedient. Then you will be what? A believer. Then you will be a Muslim, right? And what? وَالْخَاشِعِينَ وَالْخَاشِعَاتِ. and the people of khushu', right? What does this relate to? And we've talked so many times about the definition of the word khushu' from Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah says what? أَنَّهُمْ يَظَنُّ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ. That the one who is a khashi'un, they understand and they know in their mind and in their heart that they are going to go back and meet Allah. Therefore, this is what allows them to stay focused in life in terms of all of life, not only the ibadah or the worship of doing the prayer, but their whole life is focused upon Allah, right? Their mind doesn't stray from the remembrance of Allah, and they stay focused, and in doing so, they're able to have sabr because they are focused. They know where the test comes from. It is from Allah. And therefore, they're able to be truthful because they know that Allah is watching them, and they're able to be obedient because they are hopeful of Allah's maghfirah and His ajr, of His forgiveness and His reward, and they can be a believer. Obviously, they're not doing it for any other reason, that they believe in Allah and the last day, and they are a Muslim. And it all begins with the recognition of what? La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. وَالْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ وَالْمُتَصَدِّقَاتِ. Right? And those, the difference here, you say, well, wait, didn't Allah already say was sadiqina? Well, what is the difference between a sadiq and a mutasaddiq? Sadiq is a person who is truthful. The mutasaddiq comes from tasaddaqa. Tasaddaqa in في العربية يعني الذي يتصدق الصدقة إلى الفقراء والمساكين. The mutasaddiq is the person that actually gives charity specifically, not just you're sadiq and you're truthful, right, in terms of your words are truthful and reliable, but it also means you're a person of action, that you give to the poor. You are a generous person and you give to those that are needy. So a person who is mutasaddiq, right here, al-mutasaddiqina wal-mutasaddiqat, right, the men and women who also specifically give sadaqah, right? And then as-sa'imina was-sa'imat, right? Obviously, as-sam, right? Fasting. Those that fast. And this implies perhaps not just the month of Ramadan that we are in now, but if you are sa'im, this implies that you are a person that fasts on a regular basis other than just simply being in the month of Ramadan. Right? To be sa'im, it's part of your practice. And as we know, the Prophet ﷺ was sa'im, right? That's why many of the companions said, I never saw him except that he never broke his fast, right? This is contradicted, right, by other companions who are like, no, obviously he broke his fast. But some companions who perhaps didn't have the day-to-day interaction with him, when they would see him, right, he's always, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's always fasting, right? So to be sa'im, which gives us a clue of the other 11 months of the year, what should our life be like? We should be incorporating fasting into our daily regimen. And again, all of these are subjects that are tied to the predicate of what? أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. So the person that is a regular faster, Allah has already prepared in advance for them forgiveness. So that's the interesting thing about just being a person of these attributes, then Allah has already prepared for you forgiveness and inshaAllah Jannah, right? So he says, وَالصَّائِمِينَ وَالصَّائِمَاتِ وَالْحَافِظِينَ فُرُوجَهُمْ وَالْحَافِظَاتِ. And this shows what some commentators said is a difference between men and women. While Allah mentions both, that in the quality here, al-hafidhina furujahum means what? Those that guard and protect their private parts from committing illegal sexual intercourse, fornication, zina. The reason why Allah puts the al-hafidhina furujahum and then al-hafidhat is because men have whether it's biological, cultural, however it's come about, men have a greater tendency to commit acts of fornication than women do. And a lot of the data also supports this. And this is probably too because, unfortunately, women will probably suffer more detrimental aspects to it, like, being castigated from society or people not wanting to deal with them or thinking of them, where, unfortunately, even in our community, right, men are given a lot more leeway on certain things than women are, and this goes across all societies, right? It's a bias, but Allah is recognizing that this is a fact amongst human beings. So al-hafidhina furujahum wal-hafidhat, Allah is saying that those that protect their private parts as well. So if you're a person that can control one of the strongest drives within the human being, right, is the desire to procreate, right, is the sexual passions. If you can control that, then let's take a step back. You can control food. You can be a person who is sa'im. So the rest of the year, you can do so. And in reward, this is why Allah talks about that, what it is, a'adalahum ajran, right? To control these things. I mean, if we look around, most people in society are not doing this, right? Or around the world, in all cultures, right? They're not controlling their sexual desire, and they're not controlling what they put in their mouth. This is why it's such an enormous thing that even to do so, to attempt it, Allah will forgive us for just making the attempt. And then what? Ajran aziman, we will have an enormous reward for doing so. وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. And the last attribute that Allah gives is a person who is dhakir, a person of dhikr, a person of the remembrance of Allah. And we know the verse in the Qur'an where Allah commanded the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ, establish the prayer, وَلَا ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ, right? And that the remembrance of Allah is even greater than doing the prayer itself. So the very last quality that Allah assigns, at least here in this particular verse, to a believer, that starts at the beginning with just simply giving the shahada, la ilaha illallah, and ends with what? Dhikr Allah. If you don't remember Allah, you will not guard your private parts, you will not fast, you will not help other people or think of their needs, or only think of your own. You will never have any focus in your life, and especially you will not be focused on Allah, right? You will not be able to endure any kind of difficulty, which is one reason why you won't be able to control your sexual passions or your appetite, right? If you don't remember Allah, it will be very hard for you to be a truthful person, because there's advantages to lying and cheating, right? Let's just be honest. That's why people do it, right? So if you don't have dhikr Allah, you will not be a person of sidq, of truthfulness. If you don't remember Allah, you will not be obedient to Him. You will just do whatever you want to do. And if you don't remember Allah, you're not going to believe in Him, let alone the last day, the angels, the messengers, or the books. And of course, if you don't remember Him, then you cannot even say your shahada to begin with. All of this encapsulated, أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Forgiveness has already been prepared for them. And Allah doesn't say, وَالْأَجْرُ al-azima, right? Allah doesn't say, and the garden. He says what? Ajran. The reward is so enormous, so tantalizing, right? It's like, maybe if you're married, like, so, as a man, if you get your wife a gift, birthday, anniversary, or whatever, and you're like, hey, baby, I got you something. And, what'd you get me? If tomorrow's her birthday, like, hey, I got you something really special. What'd you get me? Oh, you have to wait until tomorrow. Or, to your kids. If I told my daughter now, if her birthday was tomorrow, if I told her tonight, I said, hey, Zian, Daddy got you something for your birthday tomorrow, she'd be so excited. What'd you get me? You have to wait. Right? This is very similar to this. وَأَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا, in the infinitive, right? أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, right? It's to excite the imagination, right? That's part of what it's for. So anyway, I know we're at the 8-minute mark. I'll open it up for any questions or comments you guys may have. I went on a little bit long this session. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Question, I was asked if a brother can give zakat to his sister.
No, but you can give sadaqah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Zakat, right? And maybe, well, we don't have time now. It's maybe tomorrow I'll make a little note
Okay.
to discuss the the kinds of people or the kinds of institutions that are zakah eligible. Zakah is specific, right? So there's the big umbrella called sadaqah. Underneath that is something specific called zakah. It's also one of the pillars. And unlike sadaqah, which you can just give to whomever you want, Muslim, non-Muslim, rich, poor, whatever. That's why even a smile, right, can be sadaqah. When it comes to zakah, it is primarily the right of those outside your family of al-masakin so that the money circulates, right? So maybe I'll try to make a note tomorrow when we jump on to go over just what those categories are. Or if you're really desperate to know, you can just hit me up on WhatsApp and I'll send those to you, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Well, yes. Any other thoughts, comments? I know I actually had several other verses to get to. I wanted to talk about the verse with Zayd ibn al-Haritha, who was at one time, he was the Prophet's adopted son, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at one point the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had actually changed his name to Zayd ibn Muhammad, but then Allah revealed just a couple of in this verse or in this chapter rather that you should call adopted children, right? Call them by their father's names. Don't put your name on it. And I wanted to talk about the marriage and divorce of Zayd with Zainab, of who the Prophet ﷺ then married after their divorce, but we won't really have time to get into that. But it's a very interesting. Maybe we'll just at some point. After this, we'll do that as a separate halaqah or something. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Tonight's the 23rd night, correct?
Yes, inshallah.
Maybe.
It is an odd night, even though it doesn't mean that it can't be on an even day. But it is an odd night in the last 10 days, so definitely a good night to increase the ibadah in the hope that if it is Laylatul Qadr, that we will get the reward of Alf Shahr, of 1,000 nights of worship, of 1,000 nights of dua, of 1,000 nights of asking for forgiveness, 1,000 nights of hoping to be emancipated from the fire, and so on and so on. So it's a good one to do for that, inshallah.
It's looking like Eid will be on the weekend then, Saturday or Sunday.
Right. Yep. Inshallah.
That's nice.
So if that's it, I know it's after 10. If you guys you want to go ahead and get your Isha in, inshallah. So may Allah Ta'ala indeed make us from amongst those that we just mentioned. Nasallah an inja'alna min al-muslimina wal-muslimati wal-mu'minina wal-mu'minati wal-qanitina wal-qanitati wal-sadiqina wal-sadiqati wal-sabirina wal-sabirati والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين والذاكر الله كثيرا والذاكرات إن شاء الله وأعد الله لنا إن شاء الله مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. May Allah Ta'ala make us from amongst them and also prepare for us forgiveness and indeed an enormous reward. Ameen. وصلواته وسلامه على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Alaikum salam.
وعليكم السلام. جزاكم الله خير.
وإياكم.
Thank you.